Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Caitlin O'Malley, and I'm here at PCMA HQ in Chicago. Today, Christy Lamagna is here, and I'm excited because she always does a wonderful job. She's done webinars in the past, and she was at EduCon this summer in Cleveland, and she did an awesome job at her panel there as well, too. She is going to talk about making site visits worth the trip today. So lots of good information about what you should be looking for and what to do and what not to do. Please remember you should talk to us all the time and talk to other participants in the chat box. Make sure you have all panelists and attendees chosen from that drop down. And we just feel like it's a much better experience when you're talking with each other online. You can also put questions throughout the webinar in the Q&A box, and we will come back at the end and answer any questions. Or if there are any pertinent to what we're talking about at the moment, or what Christy's talking about at the moment, then I'll interject and get that question in there for you guys. So those are all the notes that I have for you today. So Christy, thanks for joining us.
I am super happy to be here. Thank you, Caitlin. Just before we start, to reiterate what Caitlin said, I very much would like for you all to reach out with questions. I am much happier when I know that what I'm saying is resonating with you. So if there's something you want to hear more of, or you have something that I didn't explain fully enough and you want me to go back, if you would just pipe in. The goal is not for me to tell you what's on my mind. It's for me to share with you what you need to hear. So I'm happy to adapt as we go along today. So I know that we had a pre-webinar poll that went out, so thank you to everyone who has responded. I think we're going to get started on how to plan a strategic site visit. So I would imagine all of you are familiar with site inspections, and sometimes when we get really good at something, we think that we can do it quicker and faster and that it doesn't have as much importance because I'm really good at this now, so I'm not going to spend as much time on it. Site inspections, I have found, are one of those things that you can never, ever, ever cut corners. It will come back and haunt you. So one of the things that as an event strategist we do is we always start with the end in mind, and we know what the goal is before we set out on anything. So let's establish our goals for today. You're going to give me an hour of your time. So 1 hour from now, what you're going to know is the vocabulary that you need to articulate why do site visits matter. So if your boss or your manager is saying, you know what, you don't need to do a site visit, we were at this property 3 years ago, or we don't have the money to do site visits, the vocabulary that you need to articulate why it's important that you do a site visit. I'm going to give you 10 things to look for on a site visit that chances are you haven't thought of before. So that's my goal, is to teach you at least 10 new things about what to look for on site. 5 things that chances are you didn't know about CVBs. They are one of the most underutilized resources that we have at our disposal, and they're free, and we're always looking for extra hands, and we never have enough money. So we should take advantage of CVBs. We're going to talk through 5 things that you probably didn't know that they could be doing for you, and 3 new safety protocols. If you are reading industry publications, going to seminars, you'll see that safety is a really big issue for us right now and will continue to be. So where are you with your safety protocols, and how does that fit into a site inspection, and why you need to know about this? So that's what I'm going to do for you. You give me an hour and I will give you those things and a whole lot more. So off we go. Okay, how many of you, there's a poll that we're going to send out, how many of you have ever done use technology to rely on, to use as information instead of going on an actual site visit? So how many of you have relied solely on technology to choose a venue instead of doing a live site visit? And I'd be very curious as to what your answers are. It seems to be becoming a bit of a trend, and that worries me tremendously. So please do answer honestly, but I'd love to know, have you ever just used technology to choose a venue? And what I'm going to tell you is that's a really, really bad idea. And I know there's no such thing as a stupid question. There is such a thing as a bad idea. Not going to see a property before you book it is a bad idea. And I'd like to help you understand why. And I know that the thought of getting on another plane and doing another trip could, be the least desirable thing in the world. It's worth the investment of your time and of the company's resources. So your organization has its own personality, right? I mean, you're either working with a bunch of hip, cool, funky people, you're working with, folks who are scientists or medical folks who are a little bit more buttoned up. Your company has its own personality. And I'm just going to hit pause. So 37% of you have never used technology exclusively to choose a venue, but 63% of you have. So I'm so glad that we asked this question and that the answer is so high, because my hope is that perhaps, Caitlin, if I can give you a to-do, we're going to ask this question again in the future. Will, if you answered yes, that you have used technology exclusively, going forward, would you use exclusively technology to choose a venue? Because my hope is at the end of this, you will no longer think that's a good idea. So your company has a personality, and hotels and cities do too. So for you to say, you know what, everybody loves San Francisco and it's a happening city, we can afford it, we want to go to San Francisco, that's wonderful from just a strictly factual perspective. But hotels have personalities, cities have personalities. I don't know how many of you have ever been to the Hotel Delano in Miami Beach. That hotel has a vibe. And when I walked into that hotel, I immediately knew that I was not, nor will I ever be cool enough to stay at that hotel. Now, what I knew was this wasn't about me, and my audience was that cool. So we ended up booking the Delano, but that space, for me specifically, was not comfortable. For most of my clients, it would not be comfortable. I have one client who's ultra cool and has a wonderful vibe. That property worked beautifully for them. But just because the hotel has the space that you need, or the city can accommodate you in terms of the amount of lift that it has and the amount of attractions or offsite events that or venues that you might need, it doesn't mean it's the right atmosphere. Any of you who are living in San Francisco versus LA, you'll say, oh, California is not one state. There's San Francisco and there's LA. There's an incredible difference between those two places. Just like New York is not just New York. You can live in Buffalo or you can live in Manhattan. Cities have their own personalities. You really do want to go experience the city. And there are tangibles that only a site visit can ascertain. There are things that once you go to Colorado and feel the vibe of Colorado and realize that it's very outdoorsy, everybody loves animals, you may realize, okay, my group is really going to resonate with that. So my question is, if you have a boss or you're one of the people who are using technology exclusively to book a venue, have you ever seen a house in your neighborhood that's for sale and then gone and looked at it online? And are the photos that are online the same as what you see when you go and drive past the property? So the online photos may be of, the rooms look beautiful and the house looks amazing and it's for a great price. If you were to just look at the photos, would that be a house that you would buy? And then when you drive by, you say, okay, it's across the street from Firehouse, which means the sirens are going off all the time. That area floods constantly. So the reason you would never buy a house, I would hope, from just pictures that you see online is the same reason that you shouldn't book a venue just by what you see online. Pictures lie. Yelp reviews only go so far, and what's right for me may not be right for you. So when your boss says, well, we can go online and read the reviews, would you buy a house with just online information? This is an entire conference and we're bringing people. How can we not invest the time that's necessary to go see this property in person? The other thing is the surrounding area and infrastructure are the venue co-stars. So if you're staying at a 5-star hotel that's a brand name that you've been to and you trust and that's wonderful. But what about the surrounding areas? And how easy is it to get to them? Is there construction? What's going on in the area surrounding your hotel? Because those are the co-stars of your program. So just the hotel is not enough to do the research on online. And then, which I just mentioned, which is more expensive, a 3-day site visit or scheduling a conference in a location that doesn't work for your group. I will tell you a very quick story. When I was very new at this, I did rely on, the internet was brand new, and I went and looked at a picture of a hotel and it was San Francisco, and I had been to San Francisco, so I booked this property, and everything the hotel rep told me about the property was absolutely true, except when I got there, what wasn't mentioned, and I didn't ask, and the rep didn't tell me, was that there was a XXX movie theater right across the street, and gift shop. So yes, the hotel was everything they said it was going to be, except for the traffic of people going in and out of that shop across the street. It was really not the most professional atmosphere it could have been. I didn't know. I will always think of the XXX movie theater and gift shop when I think about, yes, you can do so much online. There's a lot you're not going to see unless you actually go to the property. So, and suddenly I am, okay. The smallest details can make the biggest difference. You know what? Somebody's asking me a question. Caitlin, would you like to share the question?
So that was actually not a question. I just wanted to let you know that the poll question that you asked me to add is now ready whenever you need it. So.
Oh, you know what? Do you want to tell us what the answer is?
Oh, I mean, I'm ready to push it out there for everybody. So whenever you want to push it out.
Okay. So no, that's okay. So the original question was, have you ever used technology exclusively, has gone out. So then at the end, after we've discussed this whole thing, I'm going to ask the question again to say, would you do it again? So awesome. So the smallest details make the biggest difference when you're on a site visit. So, and it's stuff that you might not be thinking about. So what's the cell reception like from throughout the building? So if you're in the lobby and you get great cell service, that's wonderful, but can you get it in the ballroom? Can you get it in the pre-function space? And then you need to think about, what cell service do you use and what cell service do your executives use? So if you don't have a company issued phone where you know everybody uses that particular carrier, then you need to ask, to your CSM or, what service do you use and does your phone work here and how many bars do you get? Because sometimes you need the signal boosters, or you need to let people know that cell service here isn't that great. We need to consider that as we're choosing our location. And so that could be a huge big deal. Do you want to be the one to explain to your executive why he can't get cell service? So the other thing you want to know is, and I think you've all been through this, do the rooms have enough outlets and are they easy to reach? How many times have you had to push the nightstand out of the way and decide, do I want to unplug the lamp or to unplug the alarm clock? At least now our cell phones have clocks, but which one do I want to unplug so that I can plug in my phone? A lot of hotels now have the USB outlets right in their lamps, but it's something that if you don't look, your attendees are going to be cranky and they're going to mention it to you. So just look and double check. And if they don't, or they only have one, perhaps a really wonderful on-site gift is to do an adapter that has 3 USB ports that goes straight into an outlet, and that would be a really good on-site gift because the property is perfect. That's something that isn't perfect about it, so make it thematic and people can start using it right away. Room service. The reason I tell you to ask if there's room service, depending on the age group of your attendees, millennials, not really looking for room service. Generation X and baby boomers are looking for room service. So I know that some of the major chains are starting to take that out. It's something that you're going to want to be aware of because it is going to concern some people that, if it does not exist. So the other thing, and you know what, just so that you guys know, everything that I'm going over, I'm going to send you these slides and I'm going to send you contact information afterwards to answer some questions. I have a book coming out that's going to give you all of this and more, and anyone who's on this webinar can get a free code to download the ebook when it comes out. So if you want to just listen and take in the information, and don't worry about taking notes, and I'm sorry I didn't mention that before. How long does it take at the elevator to arrive? And it sounds silly, but when you're standing there and it takes 3 minutes because the hotel's got 2 elevators out of service, or you've got 300 people, they all need to go to the penthouse floor for a reception, will they let you reserve an elevator just for your group? Again, it's the little things that make a big difference. The conference can go beautifully, and if the elevators throughout the whole show were this big bone of contention, inevitably, they picked the smallest thing and that's what they talk about. Not that everything was perfect. It was, oh my gosh, you remember how long we waited for the elevators? So, avoid as much of this as you can because it's small until you put on a perfect event and they pick on the one thing that didn't go well. People now have a tremendous amount of dietary needs and allergies. It seems that they're also now deciding that they can't use down pillows, which if you can't, no judgment, but ask if there are hypoallergenic pillows, which is something that not everyone does and certainly wasn't a top of mind kind of conversation 10 years ago. It is now. Are there green programs? If your property is or your company is very eco-friendly, make sure that the hotel is as well, because that may be a bit of an incongruence between your values and the hotel's values. Is it a Coke or Pepsi hotel? Any of you who are addicted to Diet Coke or Diet Pepsi know that they are not interchangeable. So if your CEO, she likes to drink Diet Pepsi or Coke, whichever one it is, and you've got the opposite, you're going to have an unhappy executive on your hands. So find out if it's a Coke or Pepsi hotel. And the truth is, if it's Coke and you need Pepsi, or Pepsi and you need Coke, you can write into the contract that they will bring in the opposite brand for you for your conference. They won't if you don't ask, and you have to write it into your contract. What kind of coffee does the banquet team use? Some people are diehard Starbucks fans. Whatever it is, find out. And if, again, you know that your group are diehard Starbucks fans, talk to the hotel. Is that something that they can work with you on? Oftentimes, if you're willing to pay for it and it's not an exclusive arrangement, they will work with you on that. And then what percentage of the staff is outside contractors? Some of these things I have learned the hard way to now ask. We work with a 5-star hotel and their staff is incredible. And then when we have big lunches, everything falls apart. And we went to the banquets manager and said, what is happening? How is it that these people weren't living up to your standards? And they said, well, the people who you love work for us. The rest of them are outside contractors, and we don't necessarily have control over their behavior. So find out what percentage of the labor that's going to be servicing my event is an employee of the hotel versus either coming from a temp agency, is outside contractors. What percentage of this staff can you guarantee me, you have control over? Okay. What percentage of their staff is outside contractors? Again, really important. Who owns the hotel? The reason I tell you to ask this is if the owner of this hotel is someone who's in the news, or is owned by a competitor of yours, or is owned by someone who's is a competitor of one of your sponsors, that can be a big deal. And you don't know what you don't know. We booked a property that the client ultimately bought a competitor of the owner of this hotel, and it became this whole big deal because, well, so-and-so owns this hotel, and now we own this company, and they compete. It never occurred to me to ask who owns the hotel. Find out. I would rather have the information and not use it than need it and not have it. Find out who's coming in just before you and just after. And the reason I ask that is if it's a really high pressure group and it's an enormous buyout and you come in the morning after this group loads out, is the staff that you're getting now exhausted? Did they trash the hotel and there's not enough time for them to clean up? Was it a controversial group, which means you potentially have some leftover protesters? And who's coming in directly after you? Again, all the same reasons. You don't want for your CSM to be focused on the high maintenance client who's coming in right on your heels. I'm here right now. You need to be in this moment with me. So find out pre and post what's going on, because it's important for attention span. It's also important for folks who are staying or coming in early on the shoulder nights from those other groups into your group. So it's something that you think about, well, I'm here, all I care about is my dates. No, think about immediately before and immediately after. Take pictures of the banquet chairs and the carpets. And the reason that I say that is because when you start worrying about decor or florals or, I'm sorry, what color should we do? XYZ, the linens. I don't remember, what shade of red is this? So take a picture of the banquet chair, take a picture of the carpets. You're taking pictures on the site visit anyway. Sit in the chairs. It's incredible how uncomfortable some banquet chairs are. And again, the hotel's not going to get new banquet chairs for you, but if you know that you've got a really long general session and that these chairs are uncomfortable, factor that into how often you have breaks, or perhaps do mixed seating and have some soft seating available. Think about it from the perspective of your attendee. I tell you to measure the lectern, because when you take pictures of your event and your CEO is speaking, do you want the name of Joe's Hotel in all your pictures, or do you want your company's name? So get measurements of the lectern so that you can make a podium sign. They're incredibly inexpensive. They're made of foam core. It's a simple thing to do, but most people don't remember. And if you ask your CSM, it's oftentimes a low priority on their list because they're busy. I always ask to see the hotel's risers and their stairs fully dressed. So when you show up and you say, okay, we need, this many risers, we need it carpeted, and we need stairs on either side, oftentimes what you'll find is that those pieces of equipment are beat to heck and they look terrible. So I always ask for them to set those things up, and then the skirting that goes around it, because if the skirting, half the Velcro has worn off, so the skirting is draping and it's kind of sad and pathetic looking, you want to find that out today, not before you are about to go on for your general session. So ask them to show you, to set that up and show you what it looks like. If you don't, that's one of those things that you may regret later. Content is the most important thing you're presenting at this event. your stage should be set for the content that it's hosting. Does the waitstaff have multiple uniform options? If you're having a formal reception, does the waitstaff have formal uniforms or attire that they could wear? It's good to know while you're on the site visit. Ask, and if they do, can I see what they wear? Can I see? Do they have some kind of fiesta wear if you're in the Caribbean, or so that again you can either build it into your decor or just anticipate that for our theme night we could ask them to wear their fiesta outfits, and that will help add to our atmosphere. And the hotel staff are some of the most valuable resources you have on site. Get to know them, meet them while you're on site. I mean, these are the people who you're going to be working with if you come there, and that makes a big difference too. Are they responsive? Are they happy? Are they willing to have a conversation with you? These are the same folks you're going to be dealing with when you're on site. Get to know them. It's an important piece of the process. If you're doing a buyout, ask if the front desk staff will wear a piece of your branding. So you've bought the hotel, can they wear a cap? Can they wear something that says welcome, a pin, whatever it is? But use the front desk as part of your branding experience, especially if you're buying out the property. One of the things I like to remind everyone is to see more than you are shown. And what I mean by that is we are always going to think about when you have company over and okay, I've got people coming over in 2 hours, and you shove all the garbage in the closets. So your guests come and say, oh my gosh, your home is so beautiful. And you're thinking, just don't open the coat closet because what's going to fall out? So we all tend to want to show our best sides, but that doesn't mean that the other side doesn't exist. And when you're on a site visit, it's your job to figure out what that other side looks like, because if it exists, then potentially your attendees are going to see it, and you want to know what that is. One of the things that I like to do is go into the lobby during the time that your group will be checking in, and get yourself a comfortable seat, grab your cell phone, pick a person who's online, and just time how long it takes for that person to get from the end of the line to the front of the line, and watch that person's experience, and watch as the front desk staff is interacting with the guests. A lot of times, the front desk staff goes so far out of their way to be gracious and cheerful and helpful. And that's the first impression that your guests are going to get of the hotel. So pay attention to that, because chances are high that you're going to be greeted at the door by your CSM, and you may either bypass the check-in process, or you go in and people know who you are, so you're going to get a little bit of a VIP treatment. So just watch what everyone else is experiencing when they go in, and be aware of that. It's important. Visit the floors you were not taken to. So if I know that I'm going to show you rooms on floors 2, 4, and 6, then what I do is I go make sure I see what's on floors 3, 5, and 7. And again, every property, it takes time to get things in order, but you want to make sure that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the breakfast dishes aren't still in the hallway. And if they are, have it be something that you can address with your CSM and say, this is what I've noticed. I'd like to make sure that when we are here, we have extra banquet staff or room service staff so that does not happen. So none of it is, most of it is not impossible to fix. It's just good to be aware of so that you can address it now. There's a lawyer from Chicago, Jonathan Howe, and one of my favorite things that he says is, before you sign a contract, it's negotiating. After you sign a contract, it's begging. So learn as much as you can now so that you can negotiate and come up with a deal that's going to make both sides happy. Hotels want to shine, and they want to do their best for you. They need to know what's important to you, so you need to ask. One of the reasons, again, that you want to be at a hotel, stay at the hotel, call the operator. If you need something and it takes 10 rings, okay, then, call back at a different time. If it consistently takes an incredibly long time to get the operator on the phone, you want to be aware of that. Use room service. If your group has the potential to use room service, you should as well. I'm not telling you to order a filet mignon and a bottle of wine, but see how long it takes. See, the service when it arrives. Did it come hot? Was it timely? What is the room service menu like? If your guests are going to use room service, you should use room service. Go to the gym in the morning. If your guests are going to be at the gym at 5 a.m., get out of bed, 5 a.m. Go see what the gym looks like, because when you see it in your site visit, it's probably the middle of the afternoon and it's not really highly trafficked, and the air conditioning is wonderful, and it's a lovely space. At 5 a.m., when you've got a bunch of folks working out, is it hot? Is it stuffy? Is it crowded? Are there more people than there are pieces of equipment? Find these things out. You want to experience the hotel not in the pristine conditions of a site visit. You want to experience the hotel as your attendees will. And one of the things you also want to do then is think about, if you're going to, your pattern is Tuesday through Friday or Tuesday through Thursday, don't go to the hotel on a Monday or Friday if at all possible. If your event is in August, try and do a site inspection in August. When is the last time any of us had a year in advance to plan something? But if, as opposed to it's August 1st and the event's August 31st, which is probably more likely these days, but you want to try and replicate the experience that your attendees are going to have so that you're comparing apples to apples. And if you think that that doesn't make a difference, imagine Chicago in January versus Chicago in May. It does make a difference. Call a bellman to check out. I'm famous for traveling with one bag. Don't need anybody to help me. If I pack too much, it's my own darn fault. I need to carry it. That's not the point. It's not about you. It's not about how you travel. It's about, for your guests who are going to use bellman, how long did it take for the bellman to arrive? Again, was that bellman polite? Did your bags get to where they needed to be quickly? How many bellmen are going to be on duty while you're there? And if you know you're going to have a mass departure, do you work on luggage storage? Do you put extra bellmen on staff? What do you need to do about that? Do you print custom luggage tags that the hotel can use so that even as your bags are being checked, that there's that extra little bit of branding and that extra little detail that you pay attention to, that somebody looks at and says, they really thought of everything. Just another opportunity. Ask housekeeping for more hangers. One of the things that I have found is closets are getting smaller, hangers are getting fewer and fewer, and I still bring the same amount of clothes for 3-day meetings. So I like to ask housekeeping for more hangers. 1, to see how long it takes to get them. 2, to make sure that you're not getting the dry cleaning yucky hangers and that they're giving you the quality hangers that are in your closet to begin with, as opposed to substandard or not the same standard of hangers that are in your closet to begin with. And think about, how long is your group going to be there? And is this an incentive trip where people are, or any kind of trip where someone is bringing a guest? Because then you need potentially twice as many hangers. So think about that, not just in terms of, this looks like it's enough. How long are they staying? Who's in the room? And if you know that every night you've got an event, then the imagination is, at least for women, they're changing from morning to evening. So think about how many outfits they are going to be wearing and factor that into your site visits. So you really want to test drive the hotel. So we also want to think about production. And actually, I'm going to hit pause and just talk about one more thing about the hotels and why you want to be there instead of just going online. Think about all of the things that you experience when you sleep in a hotel. Are the beds comfortable? Is there sound bleed from the room next door? Does the TV remote work? How long does it take for the hot water to turn on? How is the water pressure? Do you like the amenities? There's so many things that you don't know until you sleep in the hotel. Does the air conditioner make noise when it turns on? Do the keys constantly demagnetize? Is the space comfortable to work in? So if you don't stay in the hotel, you don't know these things. Everything is perfect when you walk in because you're just an observer. You need to actually interact and use the hotel in order to be able to ascertain whether or not this is going to be the right space for your group. And one of the things that I will also tell you is, oftentimes hotels go wonderfully out of their way for us when we're doing sites, and they will give us an upgrade because, you know what, we work hard, the group isn't there, and it seems like a really wonderful little perk, and you work really hard, what's the big deal? The challenge is, unless your group, everyone in your group is staying in a suite, then you shouldn't take the suite because you are not getting an apples to apples experience for the property. We all know that oftentimes a suite has a different grade of amenities. The suite may have robes and slippers, whereas traditional rooms don't. And you might think, okay, well, that's no big deal, except when you're in a room and you realize, my gosh, these tile floors are freezing. I wish they had slippers. You don't know that because you're wearing them and you're in a suite. There is a big difference between a suite and a room. Stay in the room. It's not nearly as glamorous or nearly as much fun, but I've said this at least 3 times. It's not about you. So I appreciate how hard you work, but don't take the upgrade. It defeats the purpose of your program. What I'll also tell you is, if you're considering 3 properties, I understand you want to get home and I understand you want to sleep in your own bed. If you're staying at 3 properties and you're there by yourself, you need 3 overnights. It's a long site visit, but you got to do it. You need to understand what's happening. Okay, so the Ceiling heights for production. So one of the things you want to do is think about production when you're doing your site visit, because once you have booked the hotel, that's not the time to realize, oh, the ceiling isn't high enough for my stage set, or oh, we don't have time to load into the ballroom, or any number of things. So most of us don't think about production as our priority. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is think about production. If you have a team that you use, invite them to come to the site visit. It is so worth the money. The content is the reason you're at the event. Don't skip this part. It's the most important part of the site visit is the content that your speakers are going to be sharing with your audience, which is going to affect their behavior and support your sales cycle. Is that content going to be presented in a room that can host it graciously and effectively? So what's the ceiling height from the lowest point? You may find out that the ceilings are 16 feet high, but there are chandeliers which go down 4 feet. So technically the ceilings are 16 feet high, but actually, unobstructed view is 12 feet, and that makes a big difference when you're thinking about your projectors. What is the push distance from the dock to the ballroom? What does that mean, and why do you care? Okay, so think about all the crates, if your production team is coming in from the outside, that they have to push from their trucks to your ballroom. The reason you care about that is because it affects how long it's going to take to get those cases from the truck to your ballroom. You're paying your staff, the crew, by the hour. Is that property that you're using union or non-union? Because that's also going to factor into your budget. So this affects your budget. It affects when you can do speaker rehearsals. So much is involved with production and your budget. So what's the push distance? Because if they come back to you and say, wow, it's going to take us 6 hours just to load in, that may affect your decision as to whether or not you can go to this property. Is there a schedule for the loading docks? What happens is the ballroom may be free and clear for you at 2 o'clock, but the group that just got out is still on the loading dock getting rid of their equipment, which means you really can't load in until 4 o'clock. So you need to find out, is there a schedule to use the loading dock? Is there more than one loading dock? Because these are things that could potentially come back to haunt you once you get on site, and it's too late. Once you're on site, it's too late to do anything about it. It'll blow your budget. You're into frustrated. Who knew? Well, now you do. Can you bring in your own production team? Some properties are exclusive to an in-house provider for their services. Some recommend they're in-house but let you bring in other people. For some of us, that's a deal breaker. If you can't bring in the vendors who you want to work with, you may not want to work with that property. Did I mention content is the reason you're there? So do you want to meet the person who's in charge of your content the day before that you're presenting it? If you don't, and you're going to use in-house AV, make them an integral part of your site visit and your pre-site planning so that they're on board and that they have as much information as they need to be effective and useful for you. The cost for power drops and rig points, again, if you're using production, the equipment takes more power than just a standard wall outlet. And if you're hanging things from the ceilings, that's what a rig point is. And there are costs associated with both of those things. Find out what those costs are now, because you need to factor them into your budget. And again, one of my favorite phrases is, I only like surprises at Christmas. So I'm not a big fan of surprises any other time. Find out in advance so that you can budget for it and be aware of it. The other thing is, can a 10-foot piece of scenery make the stairwell turn? So, and how big is the freight elevator and how many? So if your freight elevator diagonally is smaller than 10 feet, then nothing that's going to go onto your stage, unless you're going to put it together there or it can fold in half, can be bigger than that. Or are the stairwells such that it could make a turn so that it can get up the stairs if you can't use the freight elevator? And how many freight elevators are there? Because you find out the hard way when there's only one freight elevator that you may end up competing with a housekeeping and room service for that elevator. And if you're trying to get loaded in and you're on a tight schedule, that's not the time to find out we're all sharing a freight elevator. So these are the things you want to think about during your site visit and ask. And there are so many production questions that you can ask. You can have these slides, and then if you want, email me, and I've got other pieces as well. Caitlin has been gracious enough to give me 50 minutes. I could talk to you for 6 hours. So, okay. Emulate the actual event as best you can. So fly when the attendees are due to land. We talked about this. If they're flying in on a Tuesday, you should as well. If they're going to arrive at, mid-afternoon, you want to do the same thing. And you really want to do that because it's about the traffic patterns too. And what city doesn't at this point have terrible traffic? But sometimes it's, you say, okay, well, New York has terrible traffic. I'm used to traffic. And then you go to LA and you realize, oh my gosh, like the traffic starts at 1 p.m. So figure that out, because it may affect your plans. So if the traffic is awful, do you do a stop midway and you make it look like you did it on purpose just to break up the trip? Or do you if you're putting everybody on a bus and you realize the traffic is going to be awful, do you make sure that the 15-minute ride, which is actually now going to take an hour because of traffic, it would be really great to have cold water and snacks. So you can't do anything about the traffic, but now that you've experienced it, here are some things you might add into the program or the transportation because of it. So we talked about stay and run of passive rooms and don't take upgrades. If you can travel at the same time of year as your event, again, do so, especially, or it's not especially, because one of the other things is there are some events that happen annually. And if you're in Chicago at a particular time, I think it was 2 weeks ago during Lollapalooza, that may or may not be a good thing for you, and you may not know that. So if you go this year during this week and you know that your event is that time next year, you're going to bump into Lollapalooza, and see what effect that has on the city and if that's okay with you. Ask about lift patterns for your actual travel dates. Some locations have better lift at certain times of the year than others, and airlines will put on or take off flights depending on demand for that time of year. So we have looked into flights as we're thinking about booking a property, and our air partner has said to us, but you're looking for a group contract in May. These flights don't exist in May. So make sure you ask, because you don't know what you don't know, and why would you think that, the flight is from, leaves at 9 a.m. from, JFK today, it wouldn't in 6 months. It may not. So ask whomever it is who's booking your travel about your actual travel dates and if there is a tendency for the flights to change, and it may work to your advantage. So we've all had hotel food, and we're all tired of hotel food. And it's wonderful when you travel to get to eat at some great restaurants. And I completely agree with you. However, if your group is eating banquet food the entire time they're there, you need to be eating the banquet food or eat in-house, because for you to not know what the menus are like or how the food is prepared, or after 3 days, you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't eat this food anymore. You need to experience that, because you need to figure out what you're going to do to prevent that for your guests. Emulate their experience. And I'm not saying that you can't go out for tapas and a glass of wine and enjoy the city a little bit, but you do have an obligation to replicate the experience that your guests are having. This is not about you. And I know that that's not fun to hear, but it's true. Stay overnight, experience the property as your guests will. Okay, I promised you we would talk about CVBs. How many of you actually tell the CVBs you're coming, even if you already know the hotel you're using? And a lot of us don't. Well, I know that I'm going to XYZ hotel. I know that I'm doing it at this particular place. Why would I take the time to let the CVB know? So the reason that you do that is because the CVB, some people think that the CVB is free. Depends on how you want to look at it. When your guests check in, there is usually a tourism tax or an occupancy tax. That tax traditionally goes to a CVB. So depends on how you want to look at this, half full or half, is the glass half full or the glass half empty. So if you want to look at it as you should use a CVB because it's free, great. If you want to look at it as you should use the CVB because you're paying for it and you're leaving money on the table, that's fine too, because you're paying that tourism tax. So it may not be coming out of your budget, but dollars associated with your program are funding the CVB. So we have all looked around and said, how am I going to get all this done? I could use an extra set of hands. By the way, I have no money. So what you want to do is make sure that if you've got free hands available, take them. So one of the things that I found out through a wonderfully helpful CVB when I was coming in for a site inspection was, would you like us to plan that for you? And I said, oh, I have, I've got to go to 6 different restaurants and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And one of the things that the CVB said to me was, well, we'll do that for you. We'll pick you up at the airport, which was okay because the DMC that I was using was going to be doing that. And we'll plan the whole thing for you. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. Wouldn't you like somebody to manage your site inspection? And there's nothing wrong with that at all. So if they say, okay, Christy, we know the best way to get to all these places and the best order to do them in, we will completely manage your site visit from beginning to end. Don't worry about it. Tell us where you want to go. We'll take care of it. Okay. can they do this for me every day? And some CVBs are phenomenal, and who knew that they did that? If your conference is long enough or you're staying long enough, sometimes the CVB will cover your airfare for a site visit, and they do it happily because their job is to bring you to their city and to show it off and to excite you about being there. So if you're doing a citywide, or if you're doing something enormous, ask them, the client is coming out, would it be possible, does the CVB have the budget to pay for the client's ticket, my ticket? Ask. The worst they're going to say is no, but oftentimes if it's a big enough program, they happily do that. They want you in their city. They want to be gracious hosts to you. Cities are offering incentives or tax breaks. I've been to Texas. It's great for doing this. You book the program there, and suddenly you're getting a check from the county for X thousands of dollars, which just goes to the bottom line of your budget. Thanks for coming to Texas. Okay, I'd love to come to Texas again. So the CVB can help you find that out. The CVB is also going to be able to tell you either who was just in town or who's coming to town, and about lightning rod groups. And I don't know that that's a common phrase. Again, a lightning rod group to me is a group that is going to cause a stir, some publicity, some consternation that may cause protesting. And it's not that the group is right or wrong, but if you know that this particular group is going to be in town and may have some media and protesting around it, it's a great property, but, and even if the hotel isn't where that group is staying, if it's across the street, if it's, on the way to where you're having dinner, the CVB can probably tell you that. Like Lollapalooza, many cities have annual events. Maybe the Super Bowl is being held in their city in the year that you're going. Things that you might not think about, and it's not your job. You can't know everything about the city, but the CVB does, and they want to tell you. Work with them. It costs you nothing, or it costs you something, depending on how you want to look at it. They're there. They want to help you. The other thing that they'll do is help you with local attractions that you and they want to utilize, which can include, don't just think about properties, think about people. So if you want to, there's a music school in the area, maybe you hire the musicians, a 3-piece orchestral group to play at your welcome reception. You're helping local students, and you're saving some money. You can have an elementary school of kids come in and sing the national anthem, and then tie it into a corporate service project that you're going to make a donation. So it's kind of an easy way to tie things in. They'll also help you with local resources for donations. Do you want to donate your flowers? Do you want to donate your food? Do you want to donate your printer after you're done using it because you don't want to ship it home? CVBs will give you all of this and more. And then the other thing that you want to ask is their scheduled construction, union contracts, or new builds. So if your property is a union property and they are either working without a contract, or their contract is due to expire within, I don't know, you have to pick your own comfort zone, 3 months of when your group is going to be there, are you comfortable with that? Because the opportunity for a strike exists. And again, there is no right or wrong answer, but you need to know that, okay, if we do this conference in May, the union contract for housekeepers is expiring in March. How do we feel about that? So, or this particular union has been operating without a contract for the last 9 months. Do I believe that the contract problems will be solved before I get there? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's what you're comfortable with. Scheduled construction. Oh, surprise, the airport's getting redone, or they're adding in a runway, or they're closing a runway lane because they're doing expansion. Newark, for the longest time, was a nightmare because of construction, and they actually closed a runway. It was miserable. And are there new builds? It's great that your property has just been completely renovated. You have nothing to worry about, except the property across the street is getting imploded and they're starting over, and the work starts at 7 a.m. You're going to be unhappy about that. And they might be able to tell you. Think about, too, how many of you have heard of the Big Dig in Boston? You're going to want to know about that if something's happening that's citywide, that's going to affect your group transportation noise levels. Okay, guest safety isn't an accident. While you're on site, schedule a formal safety meeting. Meet with hotel security. Think about safety when you're doing your site inspections. Do they have defibrillators? When is the last time their staff has been certified in CPR and first aid? If you have a large group, you're going to want to bring an EMT, and I know that's not exactly site inspection, but we're talking about safety. You should always travel with a basic first aid kit and have that in your staff room. train your team on CPR and first aid. I have a friend who goes to dinner with someone every year at an international trade show, and he invited me, and when we met for dinner, this guy just burst into tears when he saw him. I was like, well, it's great that he's a great guy, but I don't know if I would cry when I saw him. And the story was, when we were at IMEX Frankfurt X amount of years ago, I was choking. This gentleman rushed across the room. He saved my life. We meet here every year at IMEX and we have dinner. Can you imagine if you were in that restaurant and everybody just stood and watched because nobody took the training? Do you want to carry that with you? So take the training. It's free for the most part. It's easy. It's a necessary evil, honestly, if you want to be truly prepared. So I can't recommend that highly enough. And find out who on the hotel staff is CPR and first aid certified. Reach cards. I always have something around my neck that I reach for when I need a phone number very quickly. Yes, they can be programmed into your phone. I like to have the redundancy. So on a reach card would be the emergency contact information for local hospitals, for my manager on staff, for my team, whatever it is you need. But I always create reach cards, laminated. Everybody on the team gets them. And then program emergency contacts into your phone. Okay, out of sight but top of mind. Staff satellite hotels. Okay, so if you have a satellite hotel, so your host hotel can't hold everyone, so you need to have satellite hotels. Someone needs to be at every single hotel, because if there's a fire drill in the middle of the night, you don't want to hear it over coffee the next morning. You need somebody there. Every hotel that you are officially using as a host hotel, whomever's in that hotel needs a full guest list. Everybody needs a guest list sorted by hotel, but whomever's staying in that hotel absolutely needs, here are all the guests you've got and here's all their contact numbers. Have a walkie-talkie app and group chat on your phones. I like the walkie-talkie app because it's faster than texting, and all you do is hit the button, you talk, you've got your headset on. It's fabulous. It's free. It's just like the old walkie-talkies, except they're not heavy. Group chat is helpful, but you don't always have the time to be typing, and attendees don't know that you're typing to your staff, and for all you know, they know you're checking your Facebook page. Have a team car for immediate use, so that if somebody needs something very quickly, you can jump in the car and go. I know Uber is fast. When you need an Uber, that's when you won't be able to find one. Are there defibrillators on site? Are you in a place where you would need a tornado shelter or hurricane shelter? Do they have them? Go see it. Predetermined meetup points. Hey, if everything goes wrong, we're going to meet at, designate what that spot is. And then check the fire exits during your site visit. And again, when you get on site, because oftentimes someone will, with no bad intention, stick something behind a fire exit because we never use this door and it gets forgotten about, and then when you need to use that particular fire exit, it's blocked. It's never done with intention, but it's something you want to check, not just that day, but the day you get back. Okay, so anyone can be a planner, and few people can call themselves strategists, and strategists are the people who think through these things, who start at the end, work their way backwards, who focus on content, and who know that events can be very powerful sales and marketing tools, and who take every opportunity that they are given to produce a meaningful event for their attendees and create an experience that's going to change behavior. So I would welcome you to consider yourself a planner who is becoming a strategist. Keep learning, keep asking questions. One thing that I didn't touch on, and I apologize, it's occurring to me now, you want to also make sure from a safety perspective, but from ADA compliance, is this hotel ADA compliant? And the thing that some people don't know is, if you're working with a hotel that's historical, they are not legally required to update the property for ADA regulations. So you need to make sure that if you know that you've got a group where they need bars in the showers or ramps, you need to know that. And the other thing, just as long as we're talking about safety, I mentioned EMTs. For me, I usually, if I have more than 750 people, I personally bring in an EMT. Some people will say 1,000 is your number. It's really going to be up to you. But for me, 750 is, I can't handle that many people. And if you just think about playing the numbers, somebody's going to trip on something, fall, somebody's going to do something stupid. If you have that many people in a hotel for that long, something's going to happen. And then someone asked, we have two thoughts. Someone had asked me once, what happens, everybody talks about security as it relates to emergencies on site, but what else is an emergency on site is, what if a speaker doesn't show? And I was actually at an event not too long ago, and a speaker didn't show, and they were they broadcast the person in so that you weren't stuck with a room that had no presenter, and they came in and they broadcast digitally, and it worked out fine. So one of the things that we can do, I talk about technology not being a substitution for a site visit. Technology in a pinch can be a substitution for a speaker. I would love to be standing in front of all of you in a room and being able to interact and smile and laugh together. What you're experiencing right now really isn't all that different from a presenter who would be speaking to an audience virtually. So just another kind of safety thing that popped into my head. So I'm going to stop talking. I can't believe our time is almost up. I'm hoping that, Caitlin, we've got some questions, and if not, I can, heaven knows I have more to say. So what can I do for you guys?
Yes, we have lots of questions that have come in. I just wanted to mention for everyone out there watching that if you heard some noise in the background, it's because Christy is in Jersey right now in the midst of huge storms.
Yeah,
so that's the thundering. If you heard, I only heard it a couple times. If anyone was wondering what that was, if it's planes or what's going on, it's because she's got a huge thunderstorm. I could see out her window earlier, and it was really coming down. So we thank you, and we're very grateful that the power did not go out while we were on today.
Yes.
So
Yes. Indeed.
we're thankful for that.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of things that you actually did touch on at the end there, but I'm going to start with those questions since they're most fresh in our mind, is about your walkie-talkie app that you were talking about, what the name of it is, and if you know if it works for Android and Apple products.
Yes, it does. And if you give me a second while you ask me the next question, I will Google it because I just got a new phone and haven't put it back on. It's super easy, and somebody on my team, if they're on this, can type in the answer. I'll let you know in half a second. If you come up with the next question, I'll look it up.
Perfect. And it kind of goes along with it, I guess. It was asked by the same person. If you have a security plan in case of a missing presenter, like, do you go and have a plan? Okay, we're going to call them, we're going to text them, we're going to, kind of like a checklist to make sure that, if they did make it in and you just haven't even heard from them, do you have a plan of what you're going to do to make sure that person's okay and, they're not laying in their room hurt or something like that? Do you have any sort of plan regarding that?
Ish. So the app is called Two Way. It is free, and it's on Google Play. And someone, I think, said that they use Zello. So if you Google it, there's any number of apps. It's the coolest thing. I mean, you hit the button, you're talking. It's fabulous, and it's so much easier than typing. So if I have a speaker who is MIA, what I usually do is set up with a presenter to meet them well in advance of their presentation. I like to have my speakers in the day before they're due to speak, which is a little hypocritical because I did a presentation for PCMA not too long ago that I landed and went straight to the webinar or the seminar, which is not ideal. But you made
it.
I did make it.
You made it.
I make sure that I know what my speaker's travel plans are. I send a car for my speaker. Again, I'm awful at that because I don't need a town car. I'll just take an Uber. You know what? I'm not doing it because you're fancy. I'm doing it because I want your body in a vehicle that I am controlling. So I make sure that I pick up the speaker from the airport so that I know that they're on property. I obviously have their cell phone number, and we have a preordained time that we are going to meet so that we can go through everything in advance. It's amazing that seasoned speakers can do boneheaded things and say, oh my gosh, I thought I sent you my slides. You mean you don't have them? And so I leave time for the holy crap factor. But if they go MIA right before then, you know what, I never learned to tap dance and I don't know how to sing. So I would like to hope that somebody in the audience knows how to tell jokes. I've never had a speaker at the last minute not show up on me. I would, in that instance, try and get whomever is supposed to speak next, if it wasn't a breakout, to just bump it. And you always make it look like you did it on purpose. So I would say, you know what, everyone, Christy Lamagna, you know what a flake she is. She's not available, but Kate O'Malley is here, and we're going to let her speak first. So actually what I would say is, everyone, we've had a program change. Caitlin O'Malley is going to be speaking, and then Christy Lamagna will follow her, and then you hope that's true. So yeah, that's a great question. get their travel information, stick them in a car, and try and get them there the night before, is my advice.
I think that's a great tip. And before we forget, I think we should send out this poll question.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Have you ever, relied solely on technology to choose a venue instead of doing a site visit? Now that you heard this webinar, what are your thoughts? What do you think you would do? And while we let you guys answer that question, we can go to another question about, you mentioned about the EMT. So you said your marker is about 750 people. Someone asked what your marker would be of definitely hiring someone yourself to be there on site.
I don't think so if I have 750 people coming, I hire an EMT and have them come on site. I work with the local fire department and ambulance squad, and I do hire someone. So do you mean like hiring a nurse or a professional healthcare person to be there 24/7?
Yeah, I think it was just a question about the EMT because, usually if someone's in the hotel or at another venue, those venues will have someone. Yeah, but it's just during your meeting time that you would hire somebody over that number.
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. All right. Sorry if you can hear the sirens in the background.
Sirens weren't me.
We're downtown, so lots of sounds going on, sirens, thunderstorms. All right, let's go back to a question that was asked at the beginning. So what are your thoughts on the size of the meeting impacting whether or not you should plan on a site?
Oh, you know what? To me, 10 people, okay, probably not. 25, because in that instance, is there someone actually planning the meeting? And my imagination is you're either doing it at an airport hotel and you're just staying in a conference room or someplace small. But if you've got 100 people coming and they're important enough to bring to a city and present content to them, how is it not important enough to make sure that that content is presented well? So in my mind, if it's 25 people or more, I would kind of want to do a site visit. And I understand, 25, what's the difference if it's 35? But if I were pushed, I would say 75 people would be I have to go to this thing. And here's the other thing though. So now you've got someone who says, well, what if it's 25 really elite people and these are the 25 people on your board? Well, then what's your goal? And know your audience. So I think it's on a case-by-case basis. Oh, that's me saying I'm out of time. Sorry. So if it's a small meeting and it is not going to require that extra layer, use your discretion. Otherwise, I would say 75 would be the highest number that I would go to before I did a site visit. All right. Who's the audience? What's your goal? And I love now.
You definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say 69% of our audience said that they will now never or no way would they book a conference without doing a site visit. So yay, thank you for that. I'm glad.
Definitely changing over. But I think you're right. It's definitely important to know who you're bringing to the conference. Not to say that not every attendee is important, but that, if it's people that are on your board and you really have to make sure everything goes perfectly, you definitely want to do a site visit, even if it's 20 or something like that, just to make sure that everything is going to go well for you. So I'm going to stop these poll results.
I'm going to just do one more quick question, or not question, thought. The other thing is, and this is really hard because I know budgets are tight. In a perfect world, you're going to have 2 people on a site visit, and here's why. I don't drink coffee. I don't eat or seafood. So my opinion, I can't tell you if the coffee's any good and I can't try the lobster. The other thing is we may believe that our opinions are the only ones that counts, but it's not about us. So you have to think about your attendees, but it's really good to have someone else there who can say, I thought that was fine. I didn't have a problem with this, because if you're the only person having the experience, that is your universe. So if you can have someone else who's there who can say, I had no problem with housekeeping when I called for my hangers, at which point you do a tiebreaker and you try the experiment again. It's good to have an alternating opinion because not everyone sees the world through your filter, and you have to remember and remind each other at all times, it's not about you, it's about your attendees. And that's hard because as you're looking at the desserts and you love chocolate and you're like, you know what, our group, looking at the history, they would prefer, cheesecake, and there's a molten lava chocolate cake, on the menu. You need to be reminded that you're picking for them, not for you. And I think I saw a question about what happens when the standards aren't up to your level of excellence. I talk to the CSM, and everything is an opportunity. Information is an opportunity. And I can say, you know what, I imagine, are you guys at full occupancy right now? Okay, well, you're going to be at full occupancy when I'm here based on my group size. I'm noticing that it seems like the staff might be just a little, running a little thin. And I'd love to talk to you about how we can add some more staff while we're here, because I know that they're doing the best they can. But, 5 rings before the operator picks up the phone, or waiting an hour for room service, or not getting XYZ, I know that that's going to be a problem, and I want to work with you. So help you win this business. How can we make sure that we can augment the staff so that the service levels we need are going to be met when we're on site? So you're not complaining, you're just here's my challenge, please help me solve it so that we can work together. It's none of this is difficult, or a difficult conversation.
And
always be
I think
honest.
that's a great way to go about it. Yeah, you don't want to say you guys aren't doing well enough, because it could be taken the wrong way, or maybe the right way, but offensively. And you definitely want to just constructive criticism, like, hey, can we get more people in here? Or, hey, can we do this a little bit differently? It goes a long way with the way that you ask about a problem, instead of just, listing the things that went wrong for you. I just want to say, I know it's 2:01, we're 1 minute past 2:01 Central Time, but we do have a few more questions. So if Christy, you're good to stay on and answer a couple more. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's watching that has to drop out. And if you want to watch this webinar, if you want to watch the questions later, you just want to rewatch the entire thing, it will be posted by tomorrow afternoon. It will be at pcma.org/webinars. And then you can also always connect with Christy. There's all of her information. If you ever need her, you have 4 ways to stalk her now. I like it. And if that doesn't work, you can always send questions to us at education@pcma.org, and we will shoot those right over to Christy so she can answer them for you. So thanks to everybody who has to leave.
Thank you
for coming on for this hour, but we're going to keep going if anyone has more time to answer a few more questions, because quite a few have come in.
Okay, and Caitlin, one of the things I just wanted, while we were talking about hotels and feedback, one of the greatest disservices you can do a hotel is, if you were disappointed in something, to not say anything. And how many of us may go to a restaurant and they say, how's your meal? And you say, great, and you hate it. And then you just don't go back. So if you're disappointed in something that's happening at the hotel and you don't tell them, then 2 things happen. 1, you lose the opportunity for them to fix it. And 2, you cheat yourself out of what could be a fantastic partnership. So if you know that you're not going to use a property and it has nothing to do with service levels, it could be a price point, to go to the hotel and say, you know what, XYZ Hotel, we think we're going to go with this particular group because they're coming in at a rate of $189, and we just can't afford the $209 rate. Don't make a decision for them. Give them the opportunity to come back and make their final or best offer. And if they ask you for feedback and, the food was awful or whatever it is, give them in a nice way the feedback. They cannot improve if they don't know what the problem is. So you're doing everyone a disservice if you don't have that conversation before you make a decision, and you're hurting the hotel if you don't share that, because I can't fix it if I don't know it's broken.
I think that's definitely a great point, because we all tend to just say, oh no, it was great, or it went great, because you don't want to offend somebody, but you're totally right. The same way that we all want feedback for our conferences and our meetings so that we can make them the best they can be. Every place that you visit, whether it's the convention center, the hotel, anywhere you may go with your group, you want to make sure to be honest so they can do an even better job, maybe for you in the future, or for the guests that were with you, if they bring their groups perhaps back to the same location. All right, next question is that you mentioned that some CVBs are willing to, there's that thunder. Some CVBs are willing to cover costs for your flight, or maybe give you extra perks when you visit their city. Are they more likely to give you those perks and help you cover things for your own staff if you've already booked, if this is for a site visit? Or are they willing to give you more if you've already booked and you're just coming back for a site visit? How do you know what to ask for and what's stepping over the line? Or are you just gauging that by how they respond?
It's an excellent question. And the one thing that I want to, language has power, so I want to be very careful. They're not perks because this is their job. The CVB is there to represent their city and to give you all the information you need to make an educated decision that this is the best place for you to go. So when the CVB planned that site inspection for me, that's just what they offer. Those people are there and that's their job. They want to be, I've used the phrase, gracious hosts. Before you sign a contract, they're still wooing you. After you sign the contract, they already know you're coming. Now, they're going to value that business either way, but I think human nature is that if there's a little bit of competition, everyone's going to be, think about, when you're engaged versus when you're married. It's well, you're stuck with me now. So I don't think that the level of service would decline if you have already booked, but when you're talking about doing a site inspection and you say, I'm considering, New York or San Francisco, and I'm bringing 5,000 people, if one of the CVBs says, we'd love to fly you here so you could see the destination, I think that would be in their best interest if they had the budget. So I don't necessarily think that there's a difference between pre or post booking, because here's the other thing, they want you to come back. It's so much cheaper and easier to rebook business than it is to find new business. Once they get you, they want to keep you. So I don't really think there would be a huge drop off, but it is nice to get in touch with people before the contract has been signed, because the other thing is it might not necessarily affect the service that you get, but they may give you a piece of information that if you had known before that, you perhaps might have made a different decision or done things differently, if that's fair.
That makes perfect sense.
And the other thing, how do you know what's over the line? I always look at it as it's not about me. And if my boss were here, would I still do this? And, how you behave when no one's looking is what defines your character. So, that's every individual's decision. But CVBs, they're not looking to lavish you with extravagant gifts or over the top stuff. They're there to educate you. So that's what I would say there.
Great. I think that's great advice. And we did have someone who just shared that a lot of times the CVBs, maybe depending on the size of the city or, the size of the CVB, have different budgets. So you do also have to put your expectations with the size of the CVB that you're dealing with. You don't want to expect the same thing from New York if you're going to maybe Omaha, much smaller city, still a big city, but won't have the same budget less by any means.
Right, so and the benefit to Omaha is so much less expensive than the budget that they have for their CVB is probably commensurate to the rates that you're paying. So you could go to East Nowhere. If there's a CVB, they're going to do everything they can to help you. What the budget limitation of that is it depends on each city, but their desire to bring you to that city does not change with the price point of the services that they can offer you. The information is genuine, their expertise is there. They're going to do everything they can to help you. How much they can do depends on their budget.
Yep, makes perfect sense. All right, I'm going to keep moving so that we can answer as many questions as possible. We have a question about liability. So if I'm at your meeting and I'm your staff, Christy, and I am trained, certified CPR, AED, first aid, do we need to be concerned with any liability? If someone falls and they cut their leg and I'm trying to help, bandage it, keep it together until, an EMT can arrive or other services, do I have any liability, or will the meeting have any liability if I accidentally do something incorrectly?
So that makes me think of a couple of things. One, if you do bring a first aid kit and it has aspirin or any kind of medicine in it, if someone says to you, do you have an aspirin? What I will traditionally do is say, it's in the first aid kit. I will never hand anyone a pill because even if it's an over-the-counter drug, because if I don't ask if you're allergic to aspirin and that's what you take, then, so I will never hand someone medication. If I happen to have aspirin and they need one, it's over there, you go get it yourself. My understanding, and you should double check this, but my understanding from when I do the CPR and the first aid training is if you are certified, or anyone who's acting in good faith, if I decide I'm going to chop your leg off before the EMT gets there, that's probably bad. But the Good Samaritan law, so, I perform CPR on you and I break your ribs, the Good Samaritan law protects you from being sued because I cracked your ribs while I was trying to get you to resuscitate. So double check that, but most times when I have checked, it's the Good Samaritan law. I don't know if I think it's in all 50 states, but just double check. That usually gives you the opportunity to act without fear that you're going to get sued if you try and save someone's life. Because that's exactly right. I'd love to save your life, but I don't want to get sued. That's a problem. So I think the Good Samaritan law is all 50 states.
Yes, from what I know, at least in Illinois, it is, because I'm certified here. So I think that you are correct that it is nationwide, because, you know, you wouldn't want to try and help somebody in Chicago, but not try and help somebody if you're in Iowa City. Why, you know, why would there be a difference? That Good Samaritan law, like you said, in good faith, I'm trying to help and I'm not doing anything too extreme. Good Samaritan law does cover you, from what I understand.
It always works on TV.
Yes, exactly. Whatever's on TV has to be true.
It's got to be.
Another question that we had come in was, right before you mentioned ADA compliance, somebody asked about it. And have you seen any checklists? This person did actually mention a checklist that's provided by the Event Service Professionals Association. That is about ADA. So it's about accessibility at the arrival, at the check-in desk, even scents or certain things in the air that can make people react allergically, or, you know, even worse than just sneezing or anything like that. Having trained staff at the front desk, possibly in ASL or a second language if needed, and then location of AEDs. Anything that you definitely look for when you're looking for ADA compliance, because there's a lot out there. Do you use any special checklist, or is it one that you found somewhere else?
We have a checklist that we kind of have added to that would also include like toilets that are at a higher level, so that they're even with the seat of a wheelchair, grab bars in showers. Some properties that have tubs, making sure that they all, you know, if it's a shower tub combo, that there are also some stand-up showers, so that someone who can't get into a tub can get into a shower, or even be able to put their special wheelchair in the shower. And does the handle from the shower come down? Does the nozzle come down? Because that's obviously a lot easier to use if you're in a wheelchair. So we have a list that we have added to. And I think that if your group does have this need, you're going to think of things that even I haven't. But yes, I have a list that we've kind of crafted as we've gone. But I'm sure that there is someone on this call who knows even more about it than I do, and I'd be happy to, if you send me your tips, I'll add them to mine. I can send it to you, Caitlin, and you can send them out to everyone if that would be helpful.
Perfect. I'm sure everyone would love any resource that you could give them, because you're here to teach us all. Another question that came in was about eating at a hotel restaurant in order to experience the food. I think that something that you don't want to forget is you also maybe want to try their banquet option, because you don't, you know, at either a convention center or the hotel, because you don't want to assume it's the same chef, it's going to be the same quality. One quality may be way higher than the other, and there's no way to tell which way it's going to go. So do you, if you're going to eat at a restaurant in the hotel, do you also ask for some kind of food that has come from the banquet staff, or how do you, manage that, making sure you try everything?
And it's funny because there's never enough time to get it all out, and I should have said, and I apologize, find out if it's the same kitchen and if it's the same chef. And sometimes you'll see things on one menu that are also on the other, but find out, does the banquet's kitchen use the same chef as the restaurant kitchen? And if they say no, the restaurant is leased out and it's a completely separate world, then you can say, okay, so if I order room service, is that going to be the same as what I would get in banquets? If the answer again is no, because it's a more select menu, I need to do some tastings. Who's in house? I need to be able to have you steal a plate off their buffet. How do we do this? Because I have to be able to eat the banquet food. And the other thing is, if you're going to do a meal that's particularly important to you, you really do want to arrange for a tasting. And those are not extravagant. Those are not things that you do if you're just a foodie. That's something you absolutely need to do. And the other thing you want to think about is they made this for me and 3 other people. What is this going to be like for 500? And, think about how long it's going to take to get from the oven to the tables. So you are correct. You do want to try the hotel restaurant because if folks are going to be there and eating from it, you want to make sure that, it fits your per diem budget and the food is good. But you're right, there may be 2 kitchens and you do need to check that and either order from room service or see if there's a group in house and you can have something that they've ordered. You're absolutely right. So thank you to whoever asked that because I didn't mention it. So thank you for keeping me honest.
Perfect. So there was a question about doing site visits when hotels are under construction, whether it's a brand new hotel or it's a hotel that's doing updates or, for whatever reason they're under construction and you're doing your site visit the year before, 6 months before, and they're going to be done in a month or 2. Are there things that you ask for? Do you go back again to make sure that it's correct? I mean, at that point, you're kind of locked in if it's only, 2 months before you're going to be doing this final site visit.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything that you can kind of look for beforehand and ask about while the construction is still going on to kind of put your mind at ease and maybe put your higher staff, your president, your CEO's minds at ease?
So one of the things that I will tell you is if the construction is supposed to be done 2 months before my event, I don't want to book the hotel because any of you who have ever done a home project, which could include just having your bedroom painted, it just never gets done on time. And there's always something that's going to cause it to slow down. It's usually twice the time and twice the money. I'm not interested in betting against Murphy's Law that, we're scheduled to be done, 6 weeks before your event. I'll see you next year. That's my personal belief, and you should do whatever makes you comfortable, but I will not gamble with my money. This is my organization. They've entrusted me to book a property. How am I going to explain to them, well, they said they'd be done 6 weeks ago, but they're not. So that makes me nervous. If you've seen the property and now they're undergoing a renovation, they've got the mood boards and the diagrams and the renderings of what this is going to look like. So if you know the hotel, you know the reputation, and you just don't know what the final product is going to look like, if you look at those renderings and the sketches, conceptually I have done that and I have put my faith in it, and it's also going to get done long before I arrive. I don't necessarily think that's a deal breaker. If it's a property I don't know and have never seen prior to construction and I'm just looking at the renderings, it might make me a little more nervous. But if you've got time, what you can do is ask for a clause in the contract that and I'm not going to give you the right legal verbiage, but an escape clause in the contract that if after the contract signing, construction is not due on time or does not live up to these particular expectations, and you have to state what they are, then client is released from this contract with no penalties and all deposits are refundable. So you can give yourself an escape clause, and if the property is confident that they'll be done on time and they're going to do what they say they're going to do, they shouldn't have a problem writing that into the contract. That's the escape clause that I would put in.
All right, I like it. An escape clause. Makes sense. You always need a backup plan or, a way to make sure that you're going to get what you need at your site.
I'll tell you a very quick story. I'm going to give you, I did a site and the property was brand new and it was Florida and they were building a beach, which I didn't know you could do. And I said, I was in publishing. I said, my publisher needs a beach. He doesn't want to go to the public beach. He wants a private beach. I can't book this hotel if there's no private beach. Yes. We're building the beach, blah, 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 blah. I wrote into the contract because I knew that if there wasn't a beach, I would get fired. I had them write into the contract, if there is no beach, the meeting is free. I get there before the meeting. It's late at night. I'm looking out the window. It's like, I don't know if I see a beach. The next morning, I look out the window. There is no beach. The CSM came up to me. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. We didn't get the beach done. And I said, this is going to be the best free meeting I've ever had. She said, what do you mean? I was like, oh, what I brought with me. And she's like, oh, they forgot that they had done that. And it went from there's no way possible for us to get a beach to it was the craziest thing, like ants coming out of the woodwork and all these people showed up and they built me a beach. And it's the closest I've ever felt like to being an almighty presence because I demanded it and it was so, and suddenly there was a beach. So escape clauses can work. It was one of the most surreal moments of my life. They did. The most surreal moments of my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so funny. Okay, so we had a question which I think is valid for smaller meetings that maybe or smaller organizations that their budget doesn't allow for site visits. It's just not in the budget for that company, and that's one of the biggest struggles because, you know, maybe that's why these people are doing the virtual site visits, which we went over. It's not the best idea, but if that's what they have to do, that's what they're stuck in. So do you have any suggestions on how to convince the powers that be that the face-to-face, the in-person site visit is necessary? You know, maybe it's not for 3 days, maybe it is only for that one day, but do you have any tips on how to convince, you know, your bosses that you really need to go on that site visit?
So I promised I would give you the vocabulary to articulate that. I would say to your boss, would you buy a house that you've only seen online? If the meeting is important enough to bring everyone, how could it not be important enough for me to invest in making sure it's worthy of the group that we're bringing? Ask the hotel, and this is very common, and I don't know that I've ever been told no to this. If I come out for a site visit and we book your property, will you comp my stay? So, you know, you're staying overnight, it's, you know, $209. So I get that refunded if we book. If you're looking at 3 hotels and you're only, because it's a small group and you can only stay at one, stay at the one that you think you're most likely to book with, and just ask them to refund that when you book the property. As far as airline tickets, one of the things that I have contemplated, and I'll be honest with you, I've never done it, but offer to, if your company allows you to keep your airline miles, buy the value of the airline miles for you, fly on a ticket, but then they compensate you for those miles and they buy those miles and put them back into your account, which is cheaper sometimes than the airline tickets. So there are ways to do it. And if the CVB is willing, or your DMC is willing to pick you up at the airport and you can test drive your transportation company, if you're transparent with your vendors and say, I really want to come, I'd really like to see this, what can you do for me? If you're serious about coming and they believe that you're bringing business, it's amazing how much people will do to meet you halfway. So I wouldn't count out that you can do a site visit just because the money's not there. Creativity is more important than money. Get creative. Ask the hotel to help you. Ask the CVB to help you, and look at if you've got an in-house travel agent, your company's earning free tickets. Ask your in-house travel partner for one of the free tickets. Those exist. Ask them for one, and you know they're probably not going to offer it to you. Ask. That's one of the secrets that most travel companies don't tell you. So there is a way. Perfect.
Lots of great suggestions. So before we ask the last questions, there are a few questions that I can answer. Look at me, I can't even talk anymore. We've been on so long. Christy will be sharing her slides, and she will be sharing any lists that she mentioned. She has lots of great resources, so we're going to make sure everything we talked about, we send that out to you in the follow-up email. So that will come out within 48 hours. And you will have all those resources. The webinar will be posted online by tomorrow afternoon. So that would be August 15th in the afternoon. So you can watch it on demand at pcma.org/webinars. And I think those are all the questions that I can answer. So the last question that I think is an important one, and we've probably touched on it before. I know you've talked about it before because you've done webinars on this topic, but food allergies. If you have someone with a food, well, you're going to have multiple people with food allergies and probably multiple allergies. How do you give them an experience if you're doing more of a banquet like buffet? How do you give them an experience so they don't feel super singled out and they're not just given a plate when everyone else gets to choose what they want to be eating?
It's a really great question, and I love that whomever asked it did, because you're thinking about the experience of the group, and the needs of the few are just as important as the needs of the many. Because if I'm the one who's, you know, not eating, I'm the only person I care about. So what I will tell you is there are ways that you can be very sensitive to someone's food allergies without singling them out. So, for instance, a Caesar salad traditionally has cheese on top. Put the cheese, if you're at a buffet, have the cheese on the side. If you're going to do sausage and pepper, you know, do the sauteed peppers and onions and then have the sausage in a separate tray. So you can, and here's the thing, don't let them use the spoon for one in the other, so that it really is true vegetarian. So you can oftentimes take the the piece of food that is causing the allergy and just put it in a separate chafing dish. You can do gluten-free muffins. Celiac disease is a huge big deal. So I always ask the chef, every day I need new muffins if we're doing muffins, and every day I need a different muffin selection for my gluten-free folks. And as far as vegetarians, you can also go vegan, so that if you're going to do eggplant, you can do roasted eggplant and then do some eggplant rollatini, because they're buying the eggplant. Just have them prepare it 2 different ways so that it's vegan friendly, vegetarian friendly, and just not just make it look like you did it on purpose, do it on purpose. You can do a Caesar salad without cheese, and then I can add as much cheese on it as I want to. And if you think about make your owns, if you do a pasta bar and you have gluten-free pasta, and then you can add pancetta, you can add peas, you can add, so that I get to pick what it is that I want to eat or can eat and put it on my food. We just did oatmeal bars, which is the coolest thing ever. And, people picked what they wanted on it, and it allowed everyone to tailor their food experience to what they liked. It made it fun, and everybody likes options. So I would say, gone are the days where out comes a plate of steamed vegetables for your vegetarian. Do a beautiful steamed vegetable chafing dish, and you can have a sauce on the side, and it can be a pesto sauce for your vegetarians, and it can be a gorgonzola or for your vegans, and it can be gorgonzola for everybody else. So deconstruct the meal and figure out how you can take the ingredients apart or offer them twice: eggplant that's grilled and then eggplant parmesan. But deconstruct the meals and take out the things that people are allergic to, so they can add them in or leave them out, would be my suggestion.
I think that those are great suggestions. And as somebody who is very allergic to wheat, which is kind of like gluten, I always appreciate when there are options and you're not walking around thinking, okay, now where am I going to eat after I leave this reception or after I leave this meal? So definitely something to think about. And I can tell you it's definitely appreciated when you're taken into consideration in a big way, and you don't feel left out. You don't feel like anyone forgot you.
Yeah,
so,
think corn. Corn muffins, corn tortillas, for wheat allergies or gluten, think corn. That helps.
Exactly. So now that we are 27 minutes over the hour, thank you, Christy, for answering all these questions, because people definitely have lots of questions. If we didn't get your question, I did save everything. So hopefully we can go pick back through. And if there are any major questions, we can answer those for you in the follow-up email. Or you can always email your questions to Christy with those or contact her another way with the contact information on your screen, or email us at education@pcma.org. So once again, I just want to thank everybody. We still have almost 100 people on with us. Thanks for sticking it out. Christy, thank you for all this wonderful information. You always give us a great presentation. And I just want to give you an opportunity. Do you have any last words for us?
I do. One, if you email me privately, what I'm going to do is take all the emails that I get. I will answer you, but I'm going to send all the questions with the answers to Caitlin. So if you do send me a one-off, you will get everybody else's questions and their answers. And if you go to strategic.events, and this is, I'm not selling anything, there is a resources tab, and there are free toolkits and templates, and I'm giving it all away. So if you go to strategic.events, you can take everything that I have is free. So feel free to go to strategic.events and download anything that I've got. And my book is coming out November 1st. So I'm very excited about that. And it's all about strategic planning. So please watch for that. And everybody who's on this call gets a free code. So if you email me, you'll get the free code.
Awesome. So thanks for all that final information. Lots to digest, lots for all of you that stayed on, some sneak peek information, I guess. And anyone who's watching on demand, if you stuck with us this whole time, we're glad that you're going to see those opportunities as well. So I just want to give a final thank you to everyone watching either live with us now, on demand, and of course, a thank you to Christy, and say have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Bye guys, thanks.